Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Ryan Alcantara with USC Rossier Career Services, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to the USC Rossier Leadership Series, an ongoing series that showcases alumni leaders in the field. Today is our conversation with the president, and I am delighted to be joined by Dr. Dyrell Foster, president of Las Positas College. Dr. Dyrell Foster has been an administrator in the California community college system for over 20 years. He is a student-centered leader with a proven track record of advancing educational access, equity, student retention, and success. He is collaborative in his approach to implementing institutional practices, behaviors, and policies that provide a positive climate on campus and effectively addresses the diverse needs of students. As president of Las Positas College, Dr. Foster is committed to providing strong leadership with a high degree of integrity, passion, and commitment to fully serving our students in a growing and supportive community. Dr. Foster is passionate about cultivating effective partnerships and promoting innovative approaches to enhancing student success outcomes for the students at Las Positas College. Previously, Dr. Foster served as the Vice President of Student Services at Moreno Valley College, Dean of Student Affairs at Rio Hondo College, Associate Dean of Counseling and Director of Student Life at Mount San Antonio College, Director of Student Life at Evergreen Valley College, and Activities Coordinator at San Jose State University. In addition, Dr. Foster has served as a part-time lecturer in the College of Education at both Cal State University Long Beach and Cal State University Fullerton. Being first in his family to attend college, Dr. Foster received his Ed.D. in Higher Education Administration from the University of Southern California, his Master of Science in Counseling and Student Development in Higher Education from Cal State University Long Beach, and his Bachelor of Science in Applied Behavioral Science from the University of California, Davis, where he served as co-captain of the UC Davis Aggies football team. And I'll say this is a particular treat for me, as I had the pleasure to work alongside Dr. Foster many, many years ago in my first job out of grad school, and I think you were in grad school at the time. Dr. Foster, welcome, and thank you for joining us today to share your story.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Alcantara. Appreciate your introduction. And absolutely, yeah, I think it was about 26 years ago when we worked at Cal State Fullerton together. So it's great to see how the network, right, and how we stay connected throughout these years. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining this conversation today. It certainly is an honor and a pleasure. And I want to thank USC Rossier School of Education for connecting us in this way. We have a strong network through the School of Education, and I'm happy and excited to be a part of it. And so, again, just happy to be a part of this conversation. So as we move into this conversation, I want to share a little bit about my career journey. And it's important for me to start with who I am and why I chose this higher education as a career. And we know in terms of higher ed that, what I love about it is that it really allows our values to guide our work. It allows us to be reflective and to learn and grow often. And so what I love most about it, though, is really it provides us with the opportunity to have a positive impact on our students' lives, right? And we prepare them for successful careers, to better their life, and really the lives of their families. And we know how important education is, right? And it can really change the trajectory of future generations for their families. And so just leaning into our why and why the work we do is so critically important for our students and for their families as well. We know also that it's not easy work. It's consuming. It's challenging, it's draining, emotionally, intellectually, physically, but it's rewarding, right? It's satisfying, it's motivating, encouraging, and certainly meaningful. And I know we each have a story as to how we fell into our careers and our interest in higher education. And I'll share a little bit about my story, but I know you each have your own story as well. And oftentimes there's some commonalities, right, in terms of our experiences. So to start with who I am, my pronouns are he, him, his. I like to start with my ethnic background. I'm Black and Korean. I am the first in my family to attend college. My father served in the Air Force. And my mother worked as a food server in the cafeteria on the Air Force Base where I grew up. My mother learned English as a second language. And so as a young age, it was really spent a lot of time helping her navigate opening an account at the bank, right? Going with her to the DMV to get her driver's license. So just really helping her navigate life in this country because she came from Korea. And so I'm the youngest in my family. I have an older sister who also served in the military. So I want to thank her for her service as well as my dad. So we really came from a working class blue collar family, grew up in Vacaville, California, outside of Sacramento. So that's a little bit about who I am. My why is really centered on me being the first in my family to go to college, right? As a first gen student, for those of you who are first gen, you know that there's a tremendous amount of responsibility that comes with being the first. And oftentimes it includes not failing because there's a lot of expectations and a lot of responsibilities that we carry with us when we are the first, in whatever way first is, right? And how that resonates for you. But it was always important that education was a value, and my parents always wanted me to get an education to have a better life. And so quick story in terms of what really framed my why for me and kind of continues to motivate me in the work that I currently do to this day. When I was graduating from high school, I applied for one college, just one, San Jose State. And I was accepted as a computer science engineer and computer science major, I should say, to be an engineer. And the main reason was my parents wanted me to be an engineer like my uncle. And so that's all I knew was that's what I was going to do. And I kept a folder of everything that San Jose State sent to me at the time. And I received a postcard that said, your date and time to register was August 1st at 6 a.m. And this was my opportunity to finally be a college student. So that was a huge milestone in my household. I was up early that morning. My mom and dad were up early. My dad loved to cook, so I know he was in the kitchen making breakfast. And this was, when I date myself a little bit, this was when there was phone registration. And so I took the phone from the kitchen with a long cord and laid it out on the living room floor with all the papers I received from San Jose State. And I was watching the clock waiting for 6 a.m. To arrive. And when it did, I dialed the phone number and it asked for the course registration number. And I looked at everything that I had in front of me and I didn't see anything that said course registration number. And so kept flipping through my documents and I didn't have anything that I needed and I couldn't complete that prompt. And so as I'm watching the clock, it's now probably about 6:10 a.m. I'm starting to sweat a little bit because I'm nervous because I know I don't have what I need to complete this process. And my mom came out and she noticed that something was wrong. And I said, I need to make another phone call. And I called the admissions office about 6:15 in the morning. And I think you can imagine what happened when I called the admissions office at San Jose State at 6:15 a.m. Of course, no one answered. And so I, at that point, told my mom that I didn't have what I needed to register for classes and that I could not go to San Jose State. And I missed my opportunity. And my parents really didn't understand. They had never, of course, gone to college, and we didn't have any relatives aside from my uncle, but he wasn't around to support me in this process. And so I felt like I let my parents down, of course, and I realized now that if that postcard would have read, your day to register is August 1st at 6 a.m. or anytime after, right? Or anytime after, that would have changed my life and I would have eventually, hopefully, registered and enrolled at San Jose State. But it didn't. So I threw all my San Jose State information away and made the decision at that point in time that I would have to find another opportunity to attend college. I share that because the why that resonates with me is in the work that I've done throughout my career and in the work that we do together. It's especially for first generation students, is that we just need to say what we mean, right? We are so good about knowing our world and communicating in a way that resonates with us, but really just being mindful and thoughtful about what are we communicating, and is that what we want to communicate to our students, especially first gen students. And so carried that with me in all the work that I do. Um, as life happens, one door closes and another one opens. It's a long story. I ended up at UC Davis. And so that really kind of led me to the next step in my career, in which I worked part-time through work study and did outreach. And I was working at a high school, and I asked a question based on the counselor that was working there. I asked him at the time, what do I need to do what you do? He loved his job, and I was looking for what I was going to do in my career, because it wasn't going to be a computer science engineer. That just wasn't a good fit for me. And he said, you need to get a master's degree in counseling. So with that, I took his advice and ran with it. Needless to say, I went ahead and researched master's programs and landed at Cal State Long Beach, and earned my counseling degree in student development and higher ed. And then from there, I really took a traditional path, as Dr. Alcantara mentioned. I was a part of the California Community College system, and worked my way up from a classified professional as a director of student life, a dean of student affairs, eventually a vice president of student services. And 4 years ago, I had the honor of serving as president here at Las Positas College, which is located here in Livermore, known as the Tri-Valley here in the East Bay area. We're a two-college district, Las Positas College and Chabot, which is located in Hayward. LPC is about 25 miles southeast of Oakland. It's a Hispanic serving institution. We serve about 15,000 students a year. So as I think about my trajectory in terms of deciding to pursue a presidency, for me, it started really with earning my doctorate degree. That really was the key. I didn't know at the time that I wanted to or was going to ever apply for a presidency. I was the director of student life at Mount San Antonio College, and I was 8 years removed from my master's program when I decided to pursue my ADD, of course, through USC. And I knew that I needed to have it for future opportunities for advancement within our field. I didn't know what that was going to look like, but I knew that I wanted to equip myself with having everything that I could do to be competitive in any future opportunity that came my way. And so that was the main reason why I decided to pursue the EDD. Wanted just to have it under my belt. Obviously wanted to learn along the way, but there was really that tangible outcome, and the reason why I chose to pursue the doctorate degree. And so that was critical, and it really allowed me to pursue opportunities later along after I left Mount San Antonio College. I knew that it was right for me to apply for a presidency. One is that, growing up in student affairs and being a student affairs professional, for me, I had always aspired to be a vice president of student services, and that was really the ultimate goal for me. That was really the top of the career ladder that I thought I made it when I got to that point. But as a VP, and as I got closer to seeing what the role of the presidency looked like, especially in community colleges, I gained a better understanding and really gained confidence in what was required to be successful. So as vacancies became available, and really tapping into my network of mentors, which I really want to underscore how important it is to have really strong mentors that support you, that challenge you, that see things in you that you don't see in yourself, which is what I had. And so that network of folks really helped me, where they can tap your shoulder or they can nudge you in certain ways that you wouldn't normally go, that really helped me get to where I am now. So I want to thank all the mentors that have been a part of my professional career and my development. But I really didn't have an interest at the time of being a college president, but knowing that there was a clear lack of people in the pipeline, not seeing many people of color in these roles, certainly played a role in my decision. We all know that leadership matters, representation matters, and that was a heavy burden in terms of a reason as to why I aspired to pursue a presidency in the California community college system. And I knew that, there were other colleagues and friends who were men of color who were successful in these roles, and that made it possible and real for me as well. And so that was important. And then I was intentional about pursuing professional development opportunities and mentorship that prepared me not only for the process, but really that prepared me for the job. And so I love being a community college president at Las Positas College. I've always enjoyed and appreciated the opportunity to impact campus culture. And what I love about this role is having the opportunity to directly influence the campus culture and the experience for our students and for our employees. And really, being able to set the institutional priorities and the focus areas that are important to me, but also important to us. With a student-centered approach, really leaning in and prioritizing access and equity and social justice and anti-racism and student engagement and retention and success and completion, and really being able to elevate and prioritize the work that's important to serve our students. I will say that the experience that I received and how the Rossier education prepared me for this role was after completing my dissertation. I told myself, look, if I can complete the dissertation, I can do anything. So I remind myself of that often. That was work. It taught me discipline, and so I lean on that and I use that often in the work that I do. When I have a difficult task or project, I just remind myself, look, the self-talk. Look, you completed that dissertation at USC. You can do anything. So you got this. And so that is my self-talk talking. But really that was important. And it's important for me to remember because that was a journey. It was a process, but it was well worth it. Through the program, I learned how to think more critically. Growing up, my culture, leaning in more on what my mom had always taught me was, to not question authority, right? And so in the program, I had to really challenge myself because we were asked to critique research and critique studies. And I really had to sharpen my muscle and develop that muscle to do that. Have a different opinion or to look at things in a different perspective. And that has really served me well, obviously, in my role now and throughout my professional career. But most importantly, I think what I have really kind of leaned on is really just being data-driven. And it has really, in this role, leaning on data and making data-informed decisions has really helped me elevate priorities, strategic goals. It makes the case for what's important. And we always start with the data. I have a fantastic director of institutional research here at Las Positas College, and no, none of y'all can tap him. He's make sure we keep him here. He's amazing, but he helps really kind of set the tone, and his office helps kind of make the case for where we need to go as an institution. And it always starts with the data because it tells the story and it helps provide the rationale, especially as it relates to the work that we have done and continue to do regarding student equity. Just briefly, just to talk about some of the pressing issues from my perspective in terms of higher ed and really just the landscape of community colleges and even things that are happening on my campus. From a national perspective, as many of you know, the attacks on DEIA are real. The political climate across the country is dangerous. We're fortunate here in California, but we're not immune. And so that is one area that I think we all need to be mindful of. and find ways to still be able to do critical work to serve our students in the way that they deserve. And so just keeping our eyes wide open in terms of what's happening across the country in regards to DEIA is critically important. Along those lines, pressing issues constantly is ensuring that we have campus cultures and campus climates that are inclusive, that are supportive, in which students feel they belong, that are caring. And so the work here at our college is really about ensuring that we show up in that way for our students and our employees. We know that culture eats strategy for breakfast all the time. So no matter how you want to approach it, if you don't have a culture that supports students and employees in a way that is going to allow us all to thrive, then that's where we need to start. We need to make sure that we are creating these cultures that are supportive, inclusive, for our students and for our employees. And so for me, what that means is really investing in our relationships. It's about being thoughtful about communication and being transparent and honest and authentic. It's about being mindful of health and wellness. What does that look like for our students and for our employees? It's about being mindful of burnout. That is real in our profession, and we all know that. So being able to mitigate that and provide resources and support in regard to that for our employees. And it's also, from my lens, it's about also managing the cadence of the work that we do. When I think about the priorities, I think back about my very first convocation where I'm setting the goals for the institution, and as I think back, there was a lot. It was too much. There was a lot that I wanted to do, and it was overwhelming. I'm sure it was. So I apologize to everyone that received that information at that time, but it was a lot. And now, obviously, I've learned, we're doing the work to be better, right? So it's not always adding the new thing. It's like, look, what can we do to be even better, right? To be excellent in this and teaching and learning, and excellent in terms of student success. So it's just finding those opportunities to tweak and to enhance the work that we're already doing. So it's really moving away from doing one more thing and adding one more thing, which sometimes that's important and sometimes we can't control because there's mandates that come down from the state and other things that we have to do or are required to do. But within our own goal setting and identifying our priorities, it's really about, okay, how can we just elevate this even more? What is the low-hanging fruit that's really going to be a game changer for our students? And let's focus on that. And so be mindful about the cadence of the work, and knowing when to step on the gas and put on the brake, from my perspective, has been critically important. And it's been a learning lesson for me as well. And then the other piece that is pressing, it's about hiring, right? It's about ensuring that we have a diverse faculty, staff, and administrative team that is reflective of our students in our community. Budget is always a challenge. Institutional capacity is always a challenge. For community colleges in particular, the student-centered funding formula, which is really connected to accountability and outcomes now, and not just on enrollment, is a game changer for our system. And so really ensuring that we're doing right by students and helping them complete in a timely manner is important. And so understanding how the funding is going to affect our college and our district is important work. Being able to measure those metrics has been important and has been work that we've been engaged in. Community partnerships and collaboration is also important in many ways, not only because as it relates to resources, but it's about creating opportunities for our students, right? And creating streamlined processes from high school to community college to transfer and to jobs, internships. So working with business and industry and really creating opportunities for students while they're in school to build their resume and to have work-based learning opportunities, but also eventually to land jobs in our region. And so all of those partnerships and opportunities to engage is critically important. And then again, not limited to community colleges, but of course, equity work, enrollment, access and retention, guided pathways has been work that we've engaged in here at Las Positas, and that's nothing new. It's work across the country, and really being able to restructure our institutions to streamline the student experience from onboarding to completion, and then providing wraparound support through student success teams to support students along their journey. So those are just some broad pressing issues that we're faced with. And I think top of mind for me, especially as we're pre-COVID and now that we're coming out of COVID, is really just the health and wellness of our students and of our employees. Our college recently is making a recommendation for our planning priority through our process that really centers our commitment on health and wellness for students and employees. Not saying that it hasn't been, but it really is just elevated in a way that is critically important. And so I appreciate us leaning into that and being thoughtful about what that looks like as we continue on. So Ryan, that's just kind of an opening spiel there, and I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for covering so much ground in such a short amount of time. And I'll say, for your candor and honesty, you know, a lot of your first gen story resonates with me and the experiences that we have, and just seeing how that translates into student-centeredness in leadership is really powerful. And so I'll just mention to our audience, I mean, you've got to remember these things. I mean, those experiences of grit and challenge that you face should be informing how you lead in whatever position that you're in. And so again, thank you, Dr. Foster, for demonstrating that.
Absolutely.
And just a reminder, we're taking questions from the Q&A as folks registered for the program. We did get some questions, so I'm going to go ahead and start with those, but we'll be monitoring our Q&A as well as we go. So if you've got things that come up, and I'll start with maybe the professional development category. And you talked about the importance of professional development as part of your journey, identifying mentors. But what are some of your other kind of strategies or organizations that have been helpful to you? You know, if from a student or young professional or even aspiring administrator perspective, if somebody doesn't feel like they've got somebody right now, you know, where should they either be developing those skills or making those connections to find mentors?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, so I would say that professional development has just been a foundation for my career. And I say that mainly because of a number of professional organizations that I've been a part of. And, you know, I grew up in student affairs, so NASPA, the National Association of Student Personnel Administrators, has been a foundation for me in my career. And what I enjoyed about being a part of professional organizations such as NASPA is that you build your network, right? And you find colleagues and friends that are centered on the same passions and commitments that you have. But I was able to, thanks to my mentors who nudged me along, I was able to get involved on various committees and do work and learn skills that I wasn't necessarily learning on my day-to-day job, but I was able to be a part of a committee, and I was the treasurer, and I was managing the budget. So then I got some budget experience. And so it really allowed me to add to my resume in ways that was above and beyond my day-to-day job. And so professional developments and professional organizations are a great way to do it. I would also say, you know, in terms of mentoring, oftentimes, you know, I found mentors through my supervisors, and oftentimes not, right? So I would also say that, you know, I would encourage, especially those that are new professionals or maybe you're in grad school, to do informational interviews. I think that's a great opportunity to connect with people, maybe identify a college or university that you might be interested in working at, and reach out and ask for informational interview with someone. And oftentimes it's helpful if you're referred by somebody that they may know. So that network, and I think this network is critically important to kind of identify those opportunities. But informational interviews are also important as well.
Great. And we just did a workshop on informational interviews. We'll be putting that up online.
That's
So if you're
awesome.
not familiar with that process or want to fine tune it, look on our YouTube playlist. We'll be posting that up pretty soon here.
That's great.
Tacking to student success issues. And so you've talked about, the importance of student success, both in your career as well as, the attention of California Community College. Can you talk a little bit about how we're doing? Because I mean, we've got some initiatives that have been in place for a little while. Talk a little bit about the kind of retention rates, how that's evolving, and efforts to be more performance-based in funding, as well as some of the specific strategies that you're using at Las Positas.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So, as I look at our data and I look at our retention rates for first-time students, right? These are brand new students to the college. We look at fall to spring retention rates, and we're hovering about any given year, right? We have trend line data, but we're usually around 69%, 70% in terms of that, what we call persistence rate from fall to spring. So what that means to me is we're losing about 30% of our students after their first semester, right? That's significant, right? So 30%, and then you think about the actual numbers and what that means in terms of lives, we can do better. We need to do better, right? And so then what does that mean, and how do we address that? Especially coming out of COVID, one of the things that we were really thoughtful about during COVID was to show up with empathy, right? Faculty, you have students, it's online. We don't know what they're experiencing within or outside of the box that you see them in. Life is hard for many, and we don't know to what extent. So we need to be empathetic, and we need to show up with empathy. As we started to get closer to bringing folks back to work on campus and really offering more in-person classes, we leaned in on wanting to make sure that we took what we're calling, and it's not unique to us, but a caring campus approach. And we were a part of a national coaching model in which we engaged our classified professionals to develop some core commitments in terms of what that meant for us to be a caring campus, and to create a welcoming environment where students felt as if they belonged. And so our team came up with, simple things as wearing a name tag so students know who you are, right? Addressing students by their names and faculty learning the students' names, making warm referrals. If a student is in one student services area, walking them to the next area. Having faculty asking faculty to send out welcome emails before the start of class to students, to encourage faculty to not refer to their office hours on their syllabi, but to refer to them as student support hours. Using those student support hours to do 10-minute get-to-know-you conversations with every student in your class, right, throughout the first couple of weeks of the semester. And then we really leaned in, and I want to thank our state chancellor's office for making the funding available for basic needs. We have a food pantry, and really brought some great resources in terms of basic needs, as well as mental health and wellness. So all that to say is that we really wanted to create an environment where students felt supported, inside and out of the classroom. And so those are some strategies that we've are leaning in on to help address that retention and that persistence rate and help increase that, especially for first generation and students of color.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And you talked about the importance of diverse employees and how that is, part of creating an inclusive environment. What are some of the challenges that you've encountered as you've worked to do that, particularly, I'll say, within faculty ranks? And, what are some of the strategies that you'd recommend?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that question. And it is a challenge because a lot of that speaks to culture. It speaks to our practices and our policies, which have been in place for a long time, right? And so, with anything that's systemic, is you get the outcome that those systems and those policies are meant to produce. And so, unless you're intentional about changing those policies and practices, you're going to continue to get the same outcome. So, really, it requires intentionality in terms of the processes, right? Because so intentionality in terms of recruitment. What are we doing differently in terms of how we're recruiting? How are we filling the pipeline for faculty at community colleges? For full-time tenure track positions, oftentimes you get a strong pull from your part-timers. So what are we doing to build a diverse part-time pool that eventually can be a pipeline to these full-time positions? It's also about really leaning in and working with HR. And our HR has been great about looking at our committees and making sure that we have inclusive committees that are committed to diversity and being intentional about who serves on these committees, the training that they receive, and how they utilize the information they're using to make decisions. It's about our interview processes, the questions we ask. So it is work. It is work, right, to change the outcome. But I will say that it's really been some great work and some great support from our state chancellor's office for community colleges in terms of our equal opportunity plans that colleges and districts are required to enact and implement. And so we still have more work to do, but certainly knowing that it's really about changing the practices and the language that informs our policies for hiring. And so it's ongoing, but it's also staying on top of it and monitoring the progress to see if we are making any gains in that. And if not, then we need to circle back and figure out what do we need to do more of or differently again.
Yeah, that's a great point of reflecting on it. I teach public policy, and
Yeah.
too often we celebrate the decisions we've made and don't reflect enough on whether they achieve the outcomes that we want. So that's something, it's a work in progress. And so
right.
being willing to look at those and say, okay, well, what have we tried now? Wonderful. So we've got a question in the Q&A from Beverly. Thank you, Beverly, for posting. Asking if you could speak to how sponsorship has shown up in your career outside of mentorship. And I've got some thoughts on how to approach that, but I'll pitch it to you first if you've got some initial ideas, both in your career and advancement, as well as what you do for others.
Yeah. The way that I've looked at sponsorship versus mentorship is, I love the idea of sponsorship, and I think sponsorship for me, in terms of how I kind of leverage that opportunity for others, is that I've always believed that, in these processes where you're looking for a job or others are looking for a job, it's really about ensuring that your reputation precedes you in a positive way, right? And so my role when I'm sponsoring somebody is really just that, is somebody that I've been working with, that I know, that I trust, ensuring that they that they have that opportunity to be introduced to someone before they actually meet them. And so I try to open doors from that lens for the folks that I'm working with and sponsoring from that perspective.
So for students and alums that are, I want to be sponsored, like how do you go about, or how have you had success in folks identifying themselves to you as potential sponsors?
Yeah, for me, in any of those situations, whether it be a mentorship or a sponsorship, one is that the way that I've always looked at it for myself is to find someone that I aspire to whether it be a position that they have, but also really in terms of their values and how they show up. If it's aligned with who I am and what I value, and that's somebody that I would like to learn from and engage with in a relationship with, in terms of a mentorship or sponsorship. So I would say the same for someone who is seeking a mentor or a sponsor, is really to find someone who's aligned in values and in approach and philosophy, and reach out and be direct. I really am looking for someone who would be willing to invest some time in either sponsoring me or mentoring me. Would you be open to having an initial conversation to see if this is something that you would be interested in doing? That's helpful for me because it's direct. I know what the ask is, and for me anyway, I see it as a professional opportunity and professional responsibility to give back and support anyone who is also needing that type of support. So that's what I would do, is encourage folks just to reach out directly.
Great.
Yeah.
I've got a question in the chat, but before I get to that one, I wanted to ask another one from the RSVP list, because I know a lot of our students are getting ready to step into the job market. If you could share, what's the climate right now in terms of position availability, particularly in the community college system, but even throughout higher ed from your perspective?
Yeah. I would say that a lot of that is because we're funded from the state, right? So a lot of it is really finding what is the climate at the state from a budgetary perspective. We know that the governor has put out the initial proposal in January regarding the state budget, and there's not a lot of new monies there, right? So a lot of it is pretty stagnant in terms of any growth opportunities. Not a lot of one-time funds as there had been with COVID. So there was a lot of dollars available during COVID and a lot of flexibility. But I think what we're seeing right now is that there are a lot of uncertainties, especially in terms of enrollment, right? We all have experienced challenges with enrollment during the last 2 to 3 years. Many colleges, community colleges in particular, are in recovery still. So we're not at the levels as we were pre-COVID, and so there's some uncertainty there. So I would say that a lot of the funding that is going to be available and where the money is right now is in workforce development, it's in apprenticeships, and it's in grants. So I would encourage folks not to be afraid of grant-funded positions if they see those opportunities, because those are really going to be the opportunities that I think within the next year or two are the ones that are going to be available, especially for community colleges within our system.
Yeah, and that's a great skill to have.
Yeah.
And so pursuing those, that's great. So again, just a reminder in the context of that, making sure, as you're planning that job search, don't wait until the end of the semester. Those are things that you need to be doing. And the other piece is a lot of the hiring process happens because of the relationships you have. There's a formal process, but knowing people in that and our Trojan network is lifelong and worldwide. And so, not being shy about connecting with those folks, utilizing LinkedIn, participating in events to really get to know people. And so if you've got a targeted search, I want to be in the community colleges, or I want to be in the LA or Bay Area, working to conduct those informational interviews and other things so that you're set up to potentially know some folks in the places that you anticipate applying.
And that's great advice. And being a part of the Trojan family, I certainly, as we talked earlier, I certainly extend myself to anyone who would like to reach out to me directly. And the way that it works, right, is now that we're connected through this network, then you also have access to my network and the folks that I know, right? So I would encourage folks to feel free to reach out, and I think we'll share my email address. Yeah, thanks, Tom. Shortly, so feel free to take advantage of that as well.
Great. And use self-awareness in reaching out to a college president, but I do appreciate, Dr. Foster, you making that available. Thank you, Ara, for your question. So you talk about male students of all races and in all socioeconomic categories are falling significantly behind in all educational success indicators. What specifically is Las Positas doing to address this issue?
Yeah. I appreciate that question. And one thing that we noticed at Las Positas in particular was during COVID, um, we lost more male students than we had any other population. And so part of our intentionality was where are the male students going and how do we get them back? So we were really intentional about reaching out and making phone calls and trying to alleviate any roadblocks for students. We've offered to pay off their any existing debt that they had. Maybe they had an outstanding fee. We did everything that we could to try to get students back. And so our approach right now, as we move forward, is really continuing to lean into guided pathways, and that has really been a huge effort across our institution, because the purpose and the goal for guided pathways for us is to really identify students based on their career path and their career of interest, and then provide a student success team to support that. So we have all of our STEM majors as part of our STEM pathway. And now we're continuing to build out our student success team that supports every student that's in that pathway. And so what that does, that scales a lot of the work that we know has been successful in many of our learning communities, and in many programs that really are housed traditionally in student services and student affairs. And now it's really an institutional-wide approach. That's not unique to Las Positas or our district, but that's the work of what Guided Pathways is intended to do. So we're able to monitor and then create timely interventions and support for all students. And so that's really the approach that we're taking, is really to do it at scale for the entire institution and for all students.
Great, appreciate that.
Yeah.
We have a few more minutes, so if you have a question, please add that to the Q&A, and we'll work to squeeze that in. I'll pull another question from the RSVP list, because I get this question a lot of just teaching. I'm interested in teaching, whether it's community college system or other places in higher ed. What are your recommendations and advice, particularly in the community college system? We see that a lot with students that are completing a master's, and even amongst our EDD students.
So I would say to start with, and many of you may already know this, but there is a handbook, and it's the minimum qualifications for faculty and administrators in California community colleges. And this is a comprehensive handbook that lists all disciplines within our system. And it's based on Ed code, so it's law that community colleges need to hire based on these minimum qualifications, whether it be the master's degree or professional experience requirements for specific disciplines. But that's really the place to start. And I think that handbook is really just what we all go by in terms of what we're looking for minimum quals. So that would be the first place to start. And then I think, to your point, is really about really tapping that network and identifying, ideally, colleges, districts that you're interested in. And then once you do, start to identify who are some folks that you can connect with there to have some conversations, because starting to build that network and those relationships are critical oftentimes in many of these processes. Yeah.
Great, appreciate that. And I think those informal conversations, sometimes students think, oh, well, there's an adjunct position, I'm going to post to it. But in my experience, particularly on at USC in 4 years, like you may post that after you've identified a potential candidate.
Yeah.
So having those conversations is important in the community college setting as well.
Yeah. And I'll say this, maybe I shouldn't say it, but I'm gonna say it, is that oftentimes too, is be intentional about your list of references, because that matters, right? For me, when I have two candidates that are equally strong and I'm looking at a decision, I'm gonna look at the list of references. And if it's somebody that I know and trust and can vouch for a particular candidate versus somebody that I don't know at all and aren't connected, sometimes that can make a difference. And so, the list of references is also an important consideration in these processes as well. Yeah.
Great. And Andy posted to the Q&A looking for additional insights and what you're doing to advance post-completion success at Las Positas. If you have any additional.
Yeah, so it's a great question, and it's the work that we're doing. So, there's a lot that goes into that, right? So, in terms of one is ensuring that from the beginning, from access to entry, that it's a smooth transition, and we're supporting students along the way in the journey. It's about ensuring that students aren't taking more classes than they need. So having a comprehensive ed plan and meeting with the counselor is critical. And so we've really been making a concerted effort to do that. Not all the students do that. And so we're finding ways to be intentional about ensuring that students have that in place. And then the other piece is, I mentioned earlier about really working with business and industry. One of the things that we're really centered on is making sure that students have some type of work-based experience or internship along the way. While they're here, because one can help build their resume, it can help validate or not what it is that they want to do. And these would ideally be paid internships, but it also then could lead to employment after degree completion and or transfer. And so there's a lot of different components in motion, but I think that latter part in terms of making sure that students have an opportunity to experience some type of work-based learning or internship or work experience is critical. And community colleges, or maybe I'll say our college, hasn't really been intentional about that. And so we're really elevating that in the work that we do with guided pathways.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing. We have another question about completion rates.
Yeah.
And I want to use this as an opportunity to because that's a great question. Well, it's a great information that you should have as you enter into an interview.
Yeah.
College, the U.S. Department of Education College Scorecard, is that the best place to get some of that information?
Yeah, the scorecard is a great place. The Community College Chancellor's Office has a data mart that also provides some metrics that you can sort by college, by district. So that's also helpful as well, the data mart. Yeah.
Great. And I don't know if you want to speak a little bit to your numbers specifically at Las Positas.
In terms of retention or completion?
Yeah, retention, specifically talking about what percentage of students graduate within AAAS within 2 to 4 years.
Yeah.
And who continues on to colleges and universities.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and that's data that we certainly track. We have certain institutional set standards that we track in terms of our goals and tracking progress on that. I will just add that it's a little nuanced for community colleges sometimes because it's not always clean because you have to be thoughtful. We have to be thoughtful about who's in that denominator in terms of, is it all students or is it just students that are intending to transfer? And so it gets a little murky depending on how our institutional research approach is coming to that calculation. But certainly there's work to be done, and we certainly are committed to doing better. And I think what I hope is the work we're doing with guided pathways and student success teams, once that's fully built out, we'll be able to then monitor our progress and compare where we were before and then where we're at now. And I'm expecting that we'll see a positive difference in terms of student success and completion.
Wonderful. Well, I want to be cognizant of the time. Thank you so much, Dr. Foster, for being a part of our conversations with presidents, with college presidents. It's been just an absolute delight to see you again, and giving our students an opportunity to learn from just I don't know, one of the most heartful leaders of colleges that I know. So I really do appreciate you sharing some time and sharing candidly sharing your story. As we wrap up here, do you have any parting words of advice for our students and alums participating in this conversation today?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And thanks for this time and this opportunity. And I really just want to lean in on how important and how much I appreciate really this network that we have and that we will continue to grow through the School of Education at USC. And I look forward to further opportunities to connect and engage with current students and with alumni. And like I said, I certainly am open to making myself available to any of the participants who want to reach out directly to me. I'm happy to provide any support and assistance that I can in their career development as well.
I appreciate that and your willingness to be a resource. I'll use this as an opportunity to plug a priority of our dean, and we're looking to launch a new USC Rossier higher education advisory group. And so that will have USC Rossier alum that are in positions of dean or higher from a variety of different segments. And so that process is beginning this year. And there'll be more, I mean, it enables us as a school to be more connected, to ensure that we're sharing our research and also providing more opportunities for our students to learn and connect with successful alums out there doing amazing work. So I do, again, thank you, Dyrell, for being part of this conversation. As we wrap up, I want to just share kind of my closing words of advice before I turn it over to Tom. Don't forget career prep. You know, it really kind of reflecting on where you want to be. If you're planning to engage in a job search at the end of the semester, you know, don't wait till you're done with classes to begin thinking or applying or networking in those spaces. You know, if you've only got a little time, putting a little bit of time each week to develop that network, look at your application, look at your cover letter. It's really, really important, because I talk to stressed out students all the time. And if there's a way to prevent that from being a total crisis in June, we want to encourage you to do that. So we have lots of resources on our website, and there's resources at the USC Career Center too. Please take advantage of that. Feel free to reach out to us at USC Career Services. And with that, I'll turn it over to Tom.
Great, Ryan. Thank you very much for leading our conversation today. It was wonderful. President Foster, thank you for sharing your experience with us today. It was wonderful, so helpful for all of our guests. We appreciate your time that you're spending with your Trojan family today, and we're very proud of the work that you're doing for your students and your families at Las Positas. And we wish you continued success. We look forward to hearing more about the work you're doing in the future. We will be sharing a recording of today's conversation on our YouTube channel with all of our registered guests. And I also invite all of our alumni and students to explore our upcoming events. You know, we talked about that network, the importance of the network, the importance of the work that needs to be done to maintain and build that network. We have a lot of upcoming events in March. We'll be at NASPA with a reception. We have our ongoing masterclass series, and the Puglia Center has their lecture series at the end of March as well, which should be a great event. Every event is a networking event. Every event is an opportunity to build your network and connect with other individuals and build your Trojan family here. So we thank you all. You know, if there's anything else, all those platforms that Brian was talking about, tools and resources, they're wonderful and available. You just need to put the time in to utilize them and make sure you're taking advantage of all these great resources that are available. So thank you all very much. And as always, fight on.